Okay, guys, we are live, brand new Take Aim podcast, and this week I have Paul Curmi on with me. Paul is one of my good buddies from the industry and has been with Tactacam for a long time. So this week, Paul gives us the rundown on his hunts from Michigan, Iowa, Missouri, and how he incorporated using the Tactacam in all those hunts. But it's a great show. Hope you guys enjoy. We'll see you guys again real soon. All right, guys, we are live, brand new Take Aim podcast. Welcome back. Excited to get another show out and excited to talk with this guy again, Paul Curmi, one of my buddies from Michigan. And you probably have seen Paul around. There's awesome video floating out right now about Paul and using the Tactacams. But what's happening, Paul? Thanks for joining us.
What's up, man? How's it going?
Good, buddy. Paul's actually live in Harrisburg, PA for the Great Outdoors Show, but, it's pretty cool that Paul's with us today because that's a giant show, and I know he's busy. And Paul was just telling me about the mere size of that place. It's insane. But, Paul, what would you say it is if you had to walk every aisle in that booth, like probably 7-8 miles?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's my first year here working this show. I've heard about this show for years from different companies that I've worked with and different guys that come all the way out here. But I mean, I compare it to like if you're a Michigan guy and you go to like Novi and go to the Expo Center. I would say at least if you took that size of convention center and times it by probably 10, that's the size of
that's ginormous, man.
Facility. It's huge, and I haven't even seen the whole thing yet. I've basically gone through. We have 2 booths here for Tactacam. We have a booth in the archery building, and then we have a booth in the gun building, and both of those buildings are about probably the size of Novi. So it's pretty impressive. I'm pretty excited to finally get the show going and maybe have a chance to go check out some of the other booths and some of the stuff that they actually have here. I'm a little scared because it is a retail show to where I can actually buy stuff, so
right. It might not be good for you, right?
I'm hoping I don't blow too much money here.
Absolutely, that's hilarious, but so true though.
Yeah, it's a hard working these shows, especially that I've been doing the whole I call it pro staff thing, and I used to do a lot of shows at local dealers, and every time I go work a show, I end up spending more money than I actually made at the show helping out. And because you go to these shows and all these dealers and these events, and they always have really good deals. And, us hunting guys, we always got to have new gear. So it's
good
hard
gear and good deals.
To pass up those
goes hand in hand.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's really good timing that we got you on the show today because Paul's actually there with Tactacam. You guys have a booth, and I'm sure you guys are going to be running some show specials, so I'm excited to get this show out. Hopefully, actually, I'm going to bust my butt and get it out later today for you guys, but so everybody hears this and is in that area of the country, man, make sure you stop in and say hi to Paul.
And it's actually it's a 9-day show, so it runs from February 1st to February 9th. So even if this comes out next week, you're still going to probably have a chance to make your way out here. So I will be here the entire 9 days of the show. And we actually have 2 booths. We have one in the archery, one in the gun. So yeah, we're running some pretty good show specials, and probably be able to turn some products. So
absolutely. And let's get right into that, man. There's some really cool features, and we're going to kind of coincide this with Paul's awesome season, by the way. So congrats, big guy, because you've absolutely killed it this year. But we're going to talk about some of the gear Paul used and the new gear that just came out from Tactacam. But Paul, I'll kind of let you start with that on what's new from this year and from the last time you've actually been on the show with us.
I think the last time I was on the show, I was using the Tactacam 4.0. That was their, I want to say, it had been their 3rd camera. They came out, there's the original, and then the 2.0. 3.0 was kind of right in there with the 4.0. It basically was the same, except it didn't have the Wi-Fi features. But the last time I was on that show, I filmed a couple of my bucks with the 4.0, and now I've been running the 5.0 all of this 2018. I had one of the first prototypes, and then this 2019 season, I've been strictly running all 5.0s, 2 regular 5.0s and 3 or 4 of the wide 5.0s, and then the new remote system is what's been pretty cool to use. It's a lot of fun actually setting up cameras and trying to get different angles and stuff.
So tell me a little bit about the remote system. I assume it ran through app on the phone or Bluetooth, or how's it work?
It actually has its own transponder in the remote and in the cameras. It's the only remote system on the market. If you look at some of the other competitors, you have to turn on the camera and turn on the Wi-Fi for the camera and then set it out. Like you would, let's say you screwed it to above you in the tree, you would have to put the camera, turn the camera on, turn the Wi-Fi on, and then connect it to the remote system. The way our remote system works, that Tactacam camera is completely shut off. The remote is completely shut off. They can be off as long as the battery is charged. They can be off for 5 days, 6 days, whatever. And as soon as you push the button on the remote, it will send a signal to the camera, turn the camera on, and start recording with one push of a button. It works just the way our cameras work, to where it's just super simple. You just push the button once to turn it on and to record. Tactacam is all hunters. It was designed by a hunter. It's made by hunters. So we try to get it as simple as possible for each scenario. And we just want it to where if that deer of a lifetime is coming in, you just reach down and hit the button one time, and it's going to just turn on and start recording. We don't want to confuse users with, you have to turn it on, wait for it to power up, and then hit record again. So
Gotcha.
The way the remote system works is you can set out, we say up to 5 cameras, makes it a little bit easier. I've ran a little bit more. I've actually had them out past 60, 70 yards. I know guys have said they've had them out to 100 yards, and the remote will still work. It depends on the terrain. But in most bow hunting situations, you can have them on the ground, on the trail. If you're hunting bait, you can have the wide setup on bait. You can have 3 or 4 cameras above your head getting different angles, one on your weapon, and when that deer comes in or animal comes in, you just push the button one time, and it's going to turn on all the cameras that are synced to that remote. So it works pretty cool.
Yeah, that is really cool.
Yep, and that works with the 5.0. And the 5.0 that came that was the 4.0 that was previous to the 5.0. There's a lot of new features with the 5.0. It's 4K. I run it at 30 frames per second for most of my footage, and then when I do some of my low light footage, I will move that to 4K at 15 frames per second. The nice part about the 5.0 is you have 3 settings on the 5.0, just like the 4.0 did. But with the 4.0, you were kind of stuck with the factory settings. The 5.0, you can go into the app and you can customize each setting, each color for what you are using it for. If you want super slow-mo, we have it to where you can run it all the way. I think it's like 240 frames per second. It'll go. You can change the quality. You can do like 1080p. You can do 2.7K. You can do 4K. I mostly run mine at 4K. It just helps with the editing and if you want to zoom in and stuff. But a lot of cool
Paul,
features. We have.
How do you make those changes? Where is that at? Is it actually on the camera through the app?
Well, you do it 2 ways. Once you set it up, you just go on the app, and you have 3 different colors on the remote for each mode. And there's a dark blue, a green, and a teal setting on the camera. And you just go right into the app when you're hooked up to the app on the Wi-Fi with the camera, and you just pick what settings you want for each mode. And then once you set those up in the app, once you shut the camera off, those will always stay the same. You don't have to go back in every single time and reach and change those. As once you shut the camera off, it remembers what your last settings were. You can preset the zoom and everything. We go all the way from 3x to 8x zoom now, and that's all pre-programmable in the app with the 5.0.
So let's say you save it at 3 times zoom. You're in a situation where you want to zoom it in. From that point, you can just use the remote, correct, and zoom up to 8 times.
Well, that way you can either change modes. So if I wanted to have it at 3x zoom at 4K, I could set that up for my green mode. And then if I wanted 8x zoom at 4K, but I wanted to slow it down to 15 frames per second to gather more light, I would set that up as, let's say my blue mode. And once I'm in the tree and I'm in a situation where I say, okay, I want it to be a little bit pulled in a little bit farther, I want to have a little bit more zoom, you just pause the camera and then hit the mode button, and it'll change it to the next mode and then unpause it. But you could do that too. You can pause and unpause from the remote. You can't change the modes.
That's pretty unique. So, sorry, you there, Paul?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. Camera-wise, battery life, what do you got to do to maintain that battery, and what is a normal charge?
A normal charge, we're using the same battery we did in the 4.0. Everything's the same. The case is the same. So if you do have a 4.0, you don't have to buy a new battery. You don't have to buy any chargers or anything like that. Battery life is 2.5 hours of continuous recording with that battery. We do recommend with the 5.0, because it has to be able to recognize the remote. If you're not using the camera for, let's say, extended period of time, to pull that battery out of the camera, because if you do leave that battery in the camera for, let's say, 2 weeks, 3 weeks goes by and you go on a hunt, the battery will probably be drained from trying to look for the remote. But you can, if I go on a week-long hunt, I charge all my batteries up at the beginning of the hunt, and I just came back from Ohio and I hunted for 8 days straight, and at the end of the 8 days, I think my battery went down one bar on the camera. So you're good to go if you keep your batteries charged, and you'll have 2.5 hours of continuous recording.
Absolutely. Yeah, one thing, I mean, it just seems that the Tactacam is like kind of taken over, just such a great way for self-filming. Really the best way, if you ask me now, with the extra zoom. They're small and compact. If you guys haven't seen them, obviously look them up after the show, but there's so many cool features to them. One being that they're made for hunting. They're made for the outdoors, weatherproof, kind of shockproof. They're really like built well, because we all know our gear kind of gets like tossed around, beat up, and backpacks tossed and all that good stuff. But they just seem to be a very hardy camera. And I know, Paul, you just had some footage that is out. You can see it on, is it YouTube and Vimeo, or?
Yeah, it's been on YouTube and Vimeo. Bear Archery actually shared it on their the Bear Archery page. Let me just look up Bear Archery, and it's like the third or fourth video right down. This they labeled Paul Curmi, a mature Iowa buck, I think it is. They just shared it. It's on the video loop at all these shows. The Tactacam edited it for me, but they took 5 cameras that I had running in that tree and on my bow that I ran with the remote, and they made it into one video. And if you watch it, you would think there was probably 3 cameramen with me on that hunt. And it was just, I was basically just sitting in the tree alone with the remote, cameras that I mounted on different locations of the tree and on my bow. So yeah, pretty much, awesome. And I am not the tech savvy kind of guy. I can send out emails. I can do some very simple stuff, but I am not a camera expert. I am not a filming expert. I've used like a camera arm once or twice, and I've self-filmed some hunts, but before Tactacam, I've probably had maybe a couple times experience self-filming. So just being able to use those cameras and having the remote system has just made it really, really simple for me to film my own hunt.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of trying to get into in my last little spiel there, but to go along with all that good stuff I said about it, if you check out Paul's footage, you'll see like just even how crystal clear it is, how well it sounds, and like what Paul just said, it's crazy how it looks like you literally have 3 guys with you and in the tree filming, but it's just the Tactacams. And what it does is it gives you that option of having those different angles and getting to spots, and correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but it allows you to kind of get to those spots where even if you were trying to self-film with a camera arm, you can get stuck or can't move that camera.
Yeah.
And this totally takes that away, and you would not be able to tell the difference. It's unreal.
And there's a lot of there's a lot of TV shows that we sponsor, and there's guys that self-film out there that still use a regular camera and a camera arm. And it's funny because you watch a lot of these shows, they've got a Tactacam that's mounted on the side of the camera arm or on or clamped right to their actual big camera in case something happens to where the big camera goes down. They're still getting the Tactacam footage at 4K, which is really good resolution, and it's got an amazing microphone in it. So it picks up a lot of, crystal clear sound, and I think you're gonna start seeing a lot of these shows evolving into they're gonna lot less likely to take the big cameras out and take more Tactacams out. And you could literally you could film a TV show with just Tactacams. So
yeah, that's kind of where I'm moving to as far as future when I film, is I wanted to get away from just the cumbersome of trying to be a solo hunter and trying to hang a camera arm. It just doesn't work. And then just all that in and out, all the extra noise, it just weighs you down, it drags you down, and just mentally after a long season, you're like, I don't want to put up this damn camera arm one more time. And it's so much nicer to be able to either clamp on that Tactacam or screw it in the tree and you're done. You're ready to go. So my point being is it will keep you in the ball game if you want to film your hunts versus trying to do all that big cumbersome stuff.
Yeah, and they're 3.4 ounces with the battery and the SD card in them. So, you could take a handful. You take 5 of them out there, and you're probably still half the weight of what you would have for just one camera.
Yeah, you're literally 1/10 of the weight of the camera arm.
Yeah. I just I have 3 mounted to my bow normally. I've got 2 regulars facing forward this year that I've had, and then I have like a selfie one on the riser of the bow facing back at me, and then I normally take 3 of the wides, and I just throw them in my backpack. I have a couple different mounting options that I carry with me, and either screw in mounts. You can use a lot of the trail camera mounts. You just screw those into the tree, and then it's got kind of like a swivel head, and you can angle the camera wherever you want it. And the nice part with the app is you can turn the camera on and hook up to the Wi-Fi app and watch where the camera is pointed live on your phone. So you can set up those angles with your phone and make sure you're covering. A lot of times when I get up in the tree, I'll basically put 3 5.0 wides above my head, and to try to get every single angle, and just in case I kind of miss something with the Tactacam that's mounted on my bow. It's pretty cool because you get all those different angles, which shows in that footage that we were talking about from my Iowa buck. Yeah,
for sure. So run us through that real quick, Paul. Give me a couple of the options to like set up your bow if you wanted to attach it to your bow, how you do that, and which angles you use. Are you doing it from the riser, from your stabilizer, and are you using I know you just mentioned like a trail camera mount, but are you using any other kind of like universal mounts?
Yeah, so we previously had 2 packages. You had a gun package and a bow package. The bow package came with a machine stabilizer mount, which replaced your stabilizer, and you screwed it into your bow and slid the Tactacam in there. I used that for a year or 2, and then I actually now just use our gun mount, which is a barrel mount, and I just clamp it right to my stabilizer. And then I also have one clamped to the side of my drop away alongside of the bow. Those gun mounts work great because if you can just clamp onto any surface of your bow and turn the Tactacam in it, you can basically mount it to pretty much anywhere. The nice part, so this year we changed the packaging around a little bit to where we're just selling the camera, the charging cord, and basically just what you need to start, and then you can buy your accessories separate. Our accessory mount that goes around the Tactacam has the same universal mount for all action cams. So when you go out and get on online and you have all those different options that came from all the different action cams, or you used to have a GoPro and you have a pile of, you know, sticky mounts or helmet mounts or tree mounts or little tripods.
Right.
You can get that accessory mount that mounts on your Tactacam, and those other mounts will work for our mount. So you can basically use whatever you want and get creative and start mounting stuff. So basically what I do is I have 2 gun mounts. I have one mounted on my stabilizer. I have a Trophy Ridge Hitman stabilizer, and I just have that clamped on top of that. I have another gun mount that clamps onto the side of my drop-away rest where it bolts into my riser. And I do have a selfie, our accessory mount, up on the riser facing back at me. But then when I want to put it above my head or in a tree, I have 2 of the trail camera mounts. One's made by Cranford, and I think the other one's like an HME or something. Basically, you can get anywhere. Hawk makes them. Pretty much any manufacturer makes them. They're the screw-in style trail camera mounts, and that little, it's threaded, and that fits into the accessory mount. You just screw that in and turn the head and angle wherever you want. I actually have one that's almost like a chip clip too. It's just got a little like clamp on it, and I'll either clamp it on my strap above me or on a limb or wherever I can pretty much get it and face the. I actually been this late season, I've been putting them down on the ground. I've actually taken the one off of my stabilizer, putting it on a different mount and going down on the ground and angling it back up at the tree to where if I shot something, it would look like a cameraman was sitting on the ground 20 yards away filming up into the tree. And
yeah, that's a very cool idea. Yeah,
yep,
super cool.
So
now,
yeah,
which I think is really neat too, and might be a little bit, I don't want to say risque, but you know, thinking how to use this stuff, Paul, you could probably put it out, you know, like you said, at 30 yards and get an angle at ground level of a deer walking by, which would be pretty wild.
Yeah, I've got some footage that I put that Tactacam put out on their Facebook page of, it was a smaller buck. It was like a 2.5-year-old, but I had a 5.0 wide 30 yards away screwed into a tree, and you could see me up in a tree, and the buck walked, I think, 3 or 4 yards away from the camera. And if it would have been a buck that I would have wanted to shoot, I would have been able, from the footage, you would have been able to see the arrow leave me in the up in the tree stand. You would have been able to see the arrow come out of the bow, come down, and pass through the actual animal. So we kind of started playing around with that during turkey season. They're really fun during turkey season because you get into a blind and you can put your decoys out, and you can throw a couple 5.0 wides around the decoys so you can get all the different angles. We've had guys even drill holes in their decoy and put the camera into the decoy, or actually just set the camera on the decoy. A lot of these turkeys don't really care because that camera is so small, and it's like basically a little bit bigger than a shotgun shell, and you get some really, really cool footage of the animals coming up and basically attacking the decoys. So I started a little bit from that with turkey season, and then I kind of evolved it into deer hunting. I have a goal of getting a camera angle, shooting a deer that has the pass-through of my arrow coming out on film. So I came close last week, but it didn't happen. So it's still
I think that would be amazing. I know I've seen you've probably seen that footage, but Mark Jury's done that out of like a ground blind with a doe. He had like a,
Yep.
I don't know, maybe a GoPro or something he used, but obviously.
I think they started with trail cameras too. They used to stick trail cameras on the opposite side and have them set in film and video mode is how they used to do it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, you're probably right. And but that's such a cool option, and I mean with that remote, because you can see what's going on, start the camera, and I just think that would be outrageous footage. Hopefully you do it. Hopefully I'll do it one day, but I think it would be just compelling to watch.
Yeah, you can do it in food plots. I mean, if you hunt trail systems or scrapes, anytime I hunt that there's a scrape around, if there's a scrape in front of me, I'll take one of my wides and go put it down on the scrape, facing back at the scrape, to where I can get, like, if a buck comes in and he's hitting the scrape, I just turn the camera on from my tree, 40 yards away, and he doesn't even know it. I mean, you could shut the vibration off on the camera. You can shut the lights off on the camera through the app. So if you're worried about if the buck walked up to go rub a tree and he's, a foot away from the camera, we have the settings to where if you have it on your weapon, you can have it set to where it'll vibrate twice as soon as you push the button, so it's recording. We also give you that option to be able to shut that off too. So there's so many different ways you can use these cameras. It's pretty much endless.
Yeah, super cool stuff. Well, I know that I want to get into one of your hunts where you incorporated all this stuff, but I know you shot a nice deer here in Michigan, like the end of October. What'd you say it was, Paul? Like the 30th or something? But more or less, you had the craziest 10 days. So go through that real quick, and let's talk about that Iowa hunt where you used all the stuff we just talked about into that hunt.
Yeah, I started hunting October 1st when our season started. Didn't really have anything great encounters-wise, some does and some smaller bucks. And I was at work, I think the 28th, and I looked at the weather, and there was a cold front coming in, and the weather looked really good. So I basically looked at my boss when he came by and said, and by the way, I'm going to be sick tomorrow. I'm not coming in. And he just looked at me. I was like, yeah, I'm going to be in a tree. So 25 years at Ford, they kind of figured out how I operate. But yeah, I come to work, pretty much 10 months out of the year, and then come deer season, I use on my vacation and personal time. But I jumped in a tree that morning and hunted. I had 2 encounters with 2 different bucks, and I remember I was getting ready to leave for my Iowa hunt. Later on, I was leaving, I think, the 2nd of November, and I had a lot of stuff I had to tie up, go to the post office, stop my mail, kind of do a bunch of different stuff before I went on that trip. So I really hate getting down from the tree in, end of October and November. I like to do a lot of all-day hunt. So it was about 11 o'clock, and I decided, I better get down. I got to run to the post office, and I got to run to the bank, and I got to do a bunch of different stuff. So I took my face mask off. I took my binoculars off. I took my Tactacam remote off, and I started to put them in my backpack, and I heard something behind me, and I looked over my shoulder. I was hunting from a saddle, and I looked over my left shoulder, and there was a really nice buck making a scrape 30 yards behind me. He had snuck in while I was packing up, and he didn't know I was in the tree. And as soon as I looked back and I saw him, I realized he was a shooter. So I frantically opened the backpack up, reached inside, fished for the Tactacam remote, pushed the button, and it turned on the 3 cameras that were on my bow, and it turned on the 2 cameras that were above my head. Luckily, I had not taken those down yet. Grabbed the bow, I spun around, and he was walking into a brush pile, and I caught him right before he got into that brush pile, and I made, I would say, about a 33, 34-yard shot on him. I didn't have time to range him. I didn't have time to do pretty much anything. I just kind of let it fly. He took off running. It looked like an excellent shot, and the nice part about the Tactacams is as soon as it happened, I was able to go to my camera, turn it on, turn the Wi-Fi on, and connect to my phone and watch the footage from my phone. I actually got really good footage on one of the overhead cameras above me, and that one had probably the best footage out of all the other cameras, the perfect shot angle. So I was able to watch my lighted knock go into the deer, and from that angle, it looked like a great shot. I called a buddy from the tree, told him I just shot a buck, sent him the footage, and I waited about an hour, got down. It was a little bit, there was blood everywhere, tracked him, and ended up jumping him. About 2 hours later, that shot that looks perfect was actually at a different angle, and I got some liver and one lung. So I gave him some time, and I went back in the morning, and it was cold, and recovered that deer. But it was key to watch that footage from the tree to determine, for my confidence, to determine I did make a good shot on him, and just to give that animal some time. And he didn't go, I mean, he went probably 100 yards the first bed, and then the second bed he went about 80 yards. But that was I recovered him on the 30th, shot him on the 29th, and then I think on the first or second I left for Iowa. So that was the Michigan deer. That was on the pretty nice 10-point. I haven't scored any of my deer, but I'm going to say it was in the 130s or maybe even low 140s. So I'm not a huge scoring guy. I don't think I've actually had any of my bucks officially scored, but I'm just kind of pretty happy
Paul,
when
I'm in the same boat with you.
Deer.
Yeah, exactly. I've had buddies score them, or people tell me. I've never went and did it, and I just leave it at that. Like, I kind of know what it is, just like you kind of know what it is. It's close, and it's just not a big deal to me. Obviously, if it was something crazy, I'd go do it, but I know what a 150 is, I know what a 160 is, and 130 is, so I'm good with that.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy. I was happy. It was the biggest deer I've ever shot off that property. It was actually the only buck I've ever shot off that property, and I've had it for 5 to 6 years. So I've let a lot of smaller bucks go on that property, and as soon as I seen him, I was like, yeah, it's definitely gonna happen. So,
which is a phenomenal buck for Michigan. So, congrats.
Yeah, I was very happy with that buck for Michigan. Yep.
Oh, heck
yep.
yeah.
So
yeah, that does not happen, as you know, every year in Michigan.
No, especially like we're down in that southern part, very highly pressured. I mean, it is private land, but there's not a property that butts up against it that doesn't have 3 or 4 guys hunting it. It gets just as much pressure as the public. Yeah, it gets just as much pressure as the public land that's 10 miles down the road.
Yeah, so, for sure. Exactly.
And then headed to Iowa. So I got to Iowa, I want to say the first or the second. I can't exactly remember right now, but I was getting ready for this hunt for a couple of years. I hunted a friend of mine's farm, and the following summer I didn't draw, but I still went down there and helped with hanging stands and putting out mineral and camera and all that stuff, because I really wanted to learn the properties and learn some of the area. That way I wasn't just showing up and him telling me to go sit in a tree stand. I kind of wanted to do a little bit of work myself and try to get that, feel like you've earned that deer. So I went down there the previous summer, did some work, and then I went down there that September and helped hang. We hung 2 tree stands where I was the farm I actually killed my Iowa buck on, and hung a couple cameras and just got the lay of the land. Showed up there, and I hunted there for about 3 days, and this was the footage that's out there on the websites and with the multiple angles. And I hunted 2 different spots on that farm, and this spot was a very narrow, I want to say like a creek bed. It was in the middle of big ag fields, and it was just a small bottleneck. It was probably 30 yards wide, but it ran the whole entire length of the property, a couple hundred yards, and the deer would just kind of come into that piece, and they would filter down this creek bottom. And it's a pretty tight area. The brush, the thicket that's in front of me, if there was a deer in that thicket at 40, 50 yards, I would not be able to see it. I didn't see a deer until they got to about 21, 22 yards to where I could actually see what the deer was. So that morning, it was a pretty cool morning. I seen, I think, like 6 or 7 different bucks. It was my first year in Iowa, and it's a pretty amazing place. I would say if you're a whitetail hunter it's probably like if you die and go to heaven, I would probably die and go to Iowa. It's the whitetail heaven for especially for bow hunters. But saw a bunch of bucks, and then that morning I saw one really, really big buck, probably one of the biggest typicals I've ever seen, run over a hill, run into that thicket in front of me, and then another smaller buck ran in there with him, and then there was a doe in there. And about 10 minutes later, I could hear two bucks fighting, and my heart just pounding, and it kept on going and going and going. But I could hear some deep grunts and stuff, and a couple minutes later, I saw a deer coming toward me. I reached down and hit the remote to turn on all my Tactacams to make sure those were going by the time he got there. Once that deer hit that 21, 22-yard mark, it was going to happen very fast. I saw a smaller buck get pushed out of that thicket, and my buck came through. I reached down, pushed the button, turned on all the Tactacams, and he basically came in on a string, came to about 15 yards. I shot him. He mule kicked, made a very large grunt that you can hear on all the Tactacams that were running. He took off, ran behind me, and then made a left and basically died probably about 50, 60 yards from me. And out of the 5 Tactacams that I had placed in the tree and on the bow, I got 4. The impact of the arrow, I got them on 4 different Tactacams, which was pretty cool. I think the only one that didn't get the impact was the one that was out on the limb that was just facing back at me, kind of like a selfie cam. So right. I got 4 different angles of the impact shot on 5 of the cameras, and all I had to do is reach down and push a button one time and got everything. So it was
that's killer.
Pretty cool experience.
Yeah, that is amazing. That was Iowa. What I mean, it sounds like, unfortunately for you, it was over so quick you didn't get to spend a lot of time there. But I know you said you had previously already been there, Paul, but what had you had kind of game planned in your head for some of the deer movement? Was it coming off of ag into the bedding, or exactly what was your plan for that tree stand?
That tree stand, out of the 2, I mean, it's basically where we're at in Iowa. It's not a lot of woods, a lot of big ag fields with very small pockets of woods. It kind of reminds me of like when I went to Kansas. So it, like, you know, me and you are used to hunting in Michigan, and there'd be small ag fields and a ton of woods, which make deer hunting a little bit trickier. Kind of, you basically, you know, you're looking for where those deer are coming out of, bedding and feeding and all that stuff. Where out there, it's such big ag fields with smaller wood lots. I basically focused on that creek bed, them using that terrain as cover, because if they weren't in that creek bed, they were exposed in a 300-400 acre wide open bean field. So they naturally foul that, you know, that creek bed down, and they'll foul that all the way down to the back of the property, where I think they would bed in some lowland areas back in the back. So I use that creek bottom as basically a funnel to get the deer, just to find the deer that were passing through that property.
Absolutely. No, that sounds like the right plan for that area, and I'm happy to hear too that obviously Iowa, I mean, especially for you, it lived up to the hype, but not only the deer you killed, but just some of the other deer you ended up seeing. Yeah,
I actually, it's funny because I kind of named that deer, you know, the mistaken identity, because I actually thought that was the bigger deer that ran into that thicket before me, and it actually was a different deer that I shot. The one that ran into that thicket before me was probably 30 to 40 inches bigger. I was a little I wasn't let down. I was very happy with shooting a nice buck, but I was kind of let down with it happening so fast, because I was only in Iowa for 3 days, and I was with a group of my really close friends, and in Iowa, you only get one tag if you're a non-resident. So after that happened and I got back, I was pumped that I got a deer, but then I was like, oh man, like I've been waiting 4 years for this happening, and I've only been at camp for 3 days. Like, I don't want to leave, you know. You're pumped because you're there, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, what am I going to do now? So we came up, I was trying to game plan on, I was going to Ohio next. but I couldn't go there right away because there was a couple other guys that were hunting the property that I was going to. So I had about, I think it was like 10 days where I was in limbo, and I was going to go to Minnesota to hunt some public land, but their firearm season started a couple days after that. And one of the guys at camp that was there brought up Missouri. He's like, hey, man, why don't you just buy an over-the-counter tag in Missouri and run down there and try to find some public land. So we got on it, and I realized that there was public land, found a 600-acre piece of public land in Missouri that was 55 miles away from the Iowa farm. And I drive 54 miles to work one way. So driving an hour each morning and each night wasn't a big deal for me. So shot that buck on, would have been the 3rd of November, 3rd or 4th in Iowa. And like a day after took pictures and got the deer, taken care of. Middle of that day, I called the Missouri DNR and found out the rules for that piece of public land and bought my tag, jumped in my truck, and drove 55 miles to this Missouri public land and drove around at one time to kind of scout the parking lot, see how many cars were there, and got out of my truck and started hunting. So that started the whole Missouri trip, basically, right from the Iowa farm. I just kept it rolling right there.
Yeah, that is cool. So you get out there, and obviously you do what I call the Michigan stroll. You stroll around and basically try to locate other hunters and then try to figure out where to avoid them and set up somewhere.
Yeah, it wasn't a huge piece. It was, like I said, it was only 600 acres, and you can almost drive around most of the property by roads. So there was like 3 or 4 different parking lots. So I drove around the parking lot, basically seeing how many trucks that were parked at each location and picked the spot that I thought there was going to be the least amount of people with on public land in November. It's, I don't think you're ever going to find a piece of public land in November that doesn't have somebody hunting there. Got out of the truck and hunted that first afternoon and never seen a deer. Got down from the tree, walked back to my truck, ran into a couple guys that showed up after I did, and come to find out they were from the Grand Rapids area in Michigan, so they were only 2 hours from me. So we talked, and I kind of brought up, asked them where they were hunting, not to try to move in on their deer, just basically common courtesy to where I wouldn't just, show up in the dark, sun comes up and I'm, 50 yards away from another guy. So
right, for sure.
We talked, and I think they understood that I wasn't trying to move in on their deer. I was just trying to, be courteous. They told me where they hunted, and they told me that where they had seen deer and were other hunters. So I went back to that same location in the morning where I hunted that afternoon and sat till about noon or 1 o'clock and never seen a deer. So I got down and figured out I need to get farther back, and I walked probably another 3/4 of a mile. I think I was a total of a little over a mile from my truck, and found a location that looked really good. It was a natural funnel and a field, and there was a big creek behind it. And I climbed up in a tree with my saddle. There wasn't a lot of trees that you could hang a tree stand on, so I used that to my advantage and got into a pretty cool little location with the tree saddle and climbed up in that tree. And that night I saw my first Missouri public land buck. It was right before dark. It was just a little 6-point came out, and he stood there for a little bit and then kind of spooked and took off running. And I found out why, because one of the guys that was hunting farther back was walking out with his headlamp and had spooked that deer. So he had walked out. I climbed down and went back to the truck and showed up at that location the next morning and found out that it was a pretty good location. Big coal front moved in, and I was planning on sitting from morning till dark, and saw, I think, 5 bucks that morning. And the cool part was 4 of them came within 30 yards of my tree. So I knew that was a good location to sit, and I was going to sit there all day. And I did see 4 other hunters that walked by the tree too that were going different spots. So that was the downfall of that location, was it seemed like it was kind of the funnel for deer and the funnel for hunters getting on different parts of that property. But right at the end of the night, really nice mature 8-point come up over the hill, and looked at my phone, and I'm like, oh, I still got 3 minutes left to legal shooting light. He came in, and I made about a 20-yard shot on him, and he only went about 30 yards and fell over. And that was when the work started for the hunting the public land. Came to realize that I should have been in the gym a little bit more that summer. Been riding my Rambo bike a little bit too much for these hunting trips, and
you're like, oh, it just got real.
Oh, I'm 42 years old, and I realize this, public land going, mile, 2 miles back is really fun until you actually kill a deer and you got to get it out of there. So
yeah, it is crazy. Even I try to stay in somewhat shape all year, and I think I'm in shape until I drag a deer 30 feet, and then you're like, what the hell?
Yeah, I got down and made, I think I made a teaser, Facebook post with the lighted knock or something like that. And I walked a mile back to my truck and stripped down a lot of my gear and emptied my backpack with basically the essentials, and grabbed my deer cart, my trailer for my Rambo bike, and I carried that back in another mile. And it wasn't the mile walk that was bad. It was in the middle of that mile walk, there was a giant ravine with a creek that ran through it. So it was pretty steep on each side. So you almost had to slide down the one side and climb up the other. Got to the buck, field dressed it, tagged it, called it in, or did the website check-in, and then took all my sticks down and all my gear and strapped them onto that cart and got to the edge of that ravine. And I basically pushed the deer off the ravine in the cart, let them fall down to the creek, and then dragged them back up the other side. It took me about 3 to 4 hours to get that deer out of the woods. Had a lot of buddies at the Iowa farm that were offering to come help me, but kind of was stubborn, and I figured I did it this much. I want to finish the whole deal. So
you're like, I'll get it. I'll be back tomorrow at 6 a.m.
Yeah, I said, if I'm not back there by morning, here's my pin. Come and get me. I probably had a heart attack in the middle of this field trying to get this deer out. Yeah, exactly. But I got him out and got him back to the truck and got them all taken care of, and that was the third buck of my season. So I was pretty happy with that. I mean, I was really happy how it happened. It was pretty cool, just picking out a piece of public land on Onyx and driving there and just basically driving around at one time and just scouting and running and gunning and hunting. I kind of did it a lot when I was younger, and it's still pretty fun when you accomplish something like that.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's a huge accomplishment, and that's kind of what dreams are made of. Like for you to have a destination that you went to and you tagged out, and you're like, well, you know what? I still got time, and just for fun, I'm going to go do this. And you did it, and were successful, and had a good hunt, and kind of face obstacles of seeing other hunters, and the whole 9 yards. And to kill that deer, I'm sure is super meaningful.
Yeah. I mean, every hunt we all remember. Each hunt, it has something special about it. And the really cool thing is that I like about the Tactacams now is instead of just having that memory of each hunt, now I can, share that memory with my friends. And we saw each other at ATA, and we had my Iowa buck up on the TV screen on the loop at the booth, and I probably watched it 500 times in that, couple days of that show. And it was funny, we're standing there and there'd be a crowd of people would watch it, and then they look at me, they're like, even though I had a face mask on in most of the video, they're like, is that you? I'm like, yes, that's my Iowa buck. And, we're hunters and we like to, show pictures, and now I can show video, and it's pretty cool. I never in a million years would have thought that I would film my own hunts. If you would ask me 10 years ago, hey man, are you going to end up filming your own hunts? I would have said, never. I'm not camera savvy. I'm not anything like that. And now I'm out there mounting Tactacams all over trees to get different angles and putting them outside of blinds and shooting them back up into the tree and trying to get all these cool angles. The other day I set up a Tactacam up on a tree limb shooting straight down to try to get an over the shoulder shot on a deer. But it's really fun. It makes hunting it gives it a little bit more of a challenge now.
Yeah, it makes it super fun, and it's taken away all the reasons I didn't want to film before. I've always kind of fought myself on it. I never really liked to do it or even have somebody, just because it adds so much work, and it's not like fun work. Gear doesn't work all the time. You're always trying to produce for somebody else that doesn't produce right. You're getting yelled at, and or whatever. And this seems to
I've never
alleviate.
wanted to have another person in the tree. That was my biggest thing.
Yeah, that too. And just all of that combined, and I just like this, like what you said and what your setup all alone probably took 5 minutes, Paul? Like,
if that. I mean,
if that.
It goes in the front pocket. Yeah, it goes in the front pocket of my backpack. They're 3.5 ounces. I mean, some of the mounts might weigh 3 or 4 ounces, the different ones I carry. I mean, within 2 pounds in a pocket of your back, I mean, you can put them in your pocket of your hunting coats, and just walk out there and throw a couple cameras up. And I mean, people are worried. They're very durable. I mean, I've had them mounted on my snowmobile helmet, on my, four-wheelers, and, they're tough.
They're super.
I think I've only broke one, and it was because I dropped it out of a tree at 30 feet inside my backpack, and there was a bunch of stuff inside my backpack, and I cracked like a housing or something like that. It's probably the only time I've ever broke one. So, and they're very, very tough, very simple to use.
That's why I liked it. It just makes the flexibility of easy use, lightweight, and user-friendly, and it kind of has got me motivated to film again, so I'm super excited about that. And just the ease of that product alone is worth mentioning in this podcast over and over again, because it has really changed the game. Like watching your hunt, it has changed the game if you want to film at all. So.
And we have 8x zoom. It goes from 3 to 8x. Our 4.0 went up to 5x. But we always were, I want to say, lacking in the gun hunting department, because even at 8x zoom, a lot of your gun hunters are shooting at 100, 200, 300 yards on deer or animals. So they came out with the FTS, film through scope. So that will work in conjunction with your 5.0 or your 4.0 camera that you already have, and all that is I think it weighs 5 ounces. You slide that over your scope, and you put your Tactacam in on the other end, and you still look through your scope. It's not like those ones that you mount on there and you have to look at your camera screen or anything like that. It doesn't change your gun sighting in. You basically set your gun in, you can slide the FTS on it, slide the camera in there, line up your crosshairs, and you can go out, and whatever you see through your scope, if you've got a 9-power scope, if you've got a 14-power scope, whatever it looks like through that scope is what it's going to show up on the Tactacam in 4K. So
that's amazing technology, and I think it's huge, and obviously huge in this manner because me and Paul kind of know from the archery side how big crossbow hunting has gotten and how many numbers of crossbow hunters there are. But all those guys now can use this technology, which is awesome.
Yeah, and they can see right where, the nice part about it is through a scope is you can see right where your crosshairs were when you pulled that trigger. So if you were doubting your shot, you just can turn your camera on after the shot, hook up to the Wi-Fi, and watch the video right after the shot. Another really cool feature that a lot of parents have used is if you have your kid in the blind with you, you basically can link to the Wi-Fi on the camera, and you could watch it live as the deer comes in, and you could see on either your phone, you could take a tablet into the blind, and you could see right where those crosshairs are on the animal before your child or friend or whoever shoots. So if you've got we have a video, Ben Stern, his son, shooting his first deer, and he has his tablet out in the blind, and he could see right where his son had the crosshairs on the deer, and he could say, okay, son, you're good, pull the trigger. So it takes that doubt out for parents that want to take their kids hunting and they're not too sure about shot placement and stuff like that. It works really, really well for that.
Yeah, that is cool for sure. Well, I know, Paul, you got a expo to get to, and I know we covered a lot in this podcast, but and I got to actually get to work as well. But let everybody know, Paul, where they can find you social media wise and Tactacam. And once again, congrats, big guy, on an awesome season, man. I'm super pumped for you.
Thanks. I mean, yeah, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. You can just probably look up Paul Curmi. I think my Instagram is Rapala, or it's Rapala Paul 690 or something. It's an old fishing nickname I used to have. So, but I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram.
Rapala 690.
Yep, that's it. I think it was some of the other ones were used up, but I'm mostly on Facebook, Paul Curmi, and I'm pretty much work with Tactacam too. So anything Tactacam related, I can answer questions. I am the Michigan team leader for Tactacam. So if you're really interested and you're involved in the hunting industry and you want to get involved, you can reach out. Tactacam's got a application on their web page to where you can join the team. I know we've talked about it a little bit, but we have some pretty cool programs for guys that want to get involved in the hunting industry. So you can always reach out there and just shoot me a message on Facebook or whatever if you have a Tactacam and you have any questions and you're trying to figure them out. Try to be always available. I mean, I work also too, and try to get as many questions as I can answered for people, or at least send them in the right direction.
Absolutely. Well, good luck this week at the Greater Outdoor Show, man, and hope you have a good time and safe travels home. And thanks for being on the show today, man. Tons of info and tons of great stuff. And make sure to check out Paul's video on YouTube as well, and check out some of that Tactacam footage.
All right, man. Thanks, Brandon, and great talking to you again.
You too, man. We'll have you on the show again super soon. I'm sure this fall you'll be slamming some more deer, so I'll look forward to it.
Hopefully, turkey season, I'll be putting down trying to get some Tactacam footage too.
That'd be a good one to do.
Turkey hunts.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, thanks, Paul. And we'll
okay, man.
see you guys next week right here, iTunes, and on the Unfiltered Outdoor app.